podcast is right for you. Talking MMA and UFC. No casuals is the place to be. Whether it's Aiden, Luke, or Teddy too. The No Casuals podcast is right for you.
Hey guys, welcome back to a wonderful episode of No Casuals. I'm with my co-host Luke Linden. We are a week behind. I'm not even gonna have you introduce yourself, Luke. The streets know who you are. We will just get right into it with our signature segment, Fact or Fake. We're gonna talk about predominantly UFC 313 because that was a bigger event than the fight night last week. We're gonna touch on it a little bit. We're gonna mostly try to discuss 313 because 313 was a much bigger event. Even though, Luke, you said that Vegas card was a banger.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway, fact or fake, Magomed Ankalev will have at least 2 title defenses.
I'll start it off. So I'm leaning towards fact, but this is largely dependent on if this rematch between Pereira happens or not. Regardless if it does or not, though, I think that Maga, his next opponents, likely the winner of Olbrich Blachowicz or Hill Roundtree, and I think he beats either one of those winners. Yuri Prochazka could be in the mix too, which may be a tougher fight stylistically, but I think that he's going to have at least 2 title defenses.
Look, I completely agree here. I'm with Big Ank and getting at least 2 here, though I do think it depends on the matchmaking. I think that Ankalaev beats everybody at light heavyweight right now, except for maybe Khalil Roundtree stylistically. But outside of Roundtree, I think he gets beat by the entire light heavyweight division, to be quite honest. Let's talk about Pereira for a second. Fact or fake? Is he a top 4 light heavyweight of all time?
Yeah, number 100% fact. I don't think it changed him having lost his belt. If we were to rank light heavyweights, in my opinion, at least in comparison to our GOAT list, we had 4 light heavyweights on that GOAT list. Both of us had the same 4. We had John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Randy Couture, and Pereira. In my opinion, he's still at number 4.
Here's what I'll say. I don't think Randy Couture nor Alex Pereira are top 4 light heavyweight of all time. Let me explain. Couture bounced up and down between heavyweight and light heavyweight during his time as champion in both weight classes. He was a natural middleweight, really, but in that day and age, he was a light heavyweight. He was very undersized. I don't qualify him as a top 4 light heavyweight because his accolades at light heavyweight don't match up. I think Pereira has a similar problem because he's absolutely a top 25 fighter of all time. However, he was in 2 weight classes in the UFC and was a champion in both of them, which makes it a little bit harder because he wasn't dominant in either with this title loss. So I'm going to go with fake here, actually. I can think of a few light heavyweights that I might put above him based on longevity, based on accolades within the division. Of course, you have to be a champion to stack up against a dominant champion like Pereira was for a short period of time, but John Jones, I would say, is clearly the best light heavyweight of all time. Can we agree there? Okay. Yep. Daniel Cormier is number 2, easily. Yep. Those 2 are easy.
Easy.
Then we have a little bit of a mix-up. We have Tito Ortiz, who has more title defenses than Pereira. Chuck Liddell.
Shogun
Hua. Though I will say Shogun's accolades in the UFC are a little bit less pronounced than his accolades in the Pride and other promotions. I would say the same for Wanderlei Silva, for Rampage Jackson. But we could talk about prime for prime. I'll take Rashad Evans over Alex Pereira any day of the week. Is he top 5? Probably, but there's a lot of names I've thrown in the hat that are in that mix at least, and I would put above Pereira. It's strictly at light heavyweight. Fact or fake, Justin Gaethje could still become a undisputed lightweight champion.
Well, since this question says he could still become, I'm going to lean towards fact, because especially with the recent news from Islam's camp, I don't know if you saw it, about how Ilya is not going to be the person they're going to face immediately. At least his camp came out and said this, maybe not his choice. But Justin advocated for a title shot, and Dana mentioned it in the 313 post-fight press conference. And he has always said that Arman probably won't get a rebooking right away. So the question is if he can, or if he could, and I think he can be the undisputed light heavyweight champion, but I don't think he will. And I don't think he can beat Islam or any of these higher ranked lightweights that are all gunning for a title shot, but he has the path to do so.
Look, I'm gonna not even gonna answer the question. I think my answer is gonna be clear through the statement I'm gonna make. I'm gonna lean in, and I'm gonna send this message to anybody who may know anyone at the UFC who's watching this, because quite frankly, if you do not make Islam versus Ilya the next title fight at lightweight, you are missing the money of a lifetime. And I mean that. I mean that because Ilya is, in my opinion, the pound for pound number one. I mean, he is. He's so good everywhere. He's beaten everyone everywhere. He can outstrike the entire featherweight division. He can outgrapple the entire featherweight division. There's no contest for him at featherweight. No one can come close to him at featherweight. And we have Islam Makhachev, a gargantuan human being for 155, who is as elite Khabib-like wrestling with the striking that has come leaps and bounds in his last 3 fights to the point where he's one of the better strikers at lightweight too. However, we've seen Ilya who has more power than we've ever seen at featherweight. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is such a great fight. It's the highest level stylistic matchup we've ever seen in the UFC. I'm sorry, but I can't have it where this fight does not get made next. I'm sorry, as a fan, I can't allow this. If Islam fights Gaethje next, or even Arman, who would be another great fight, I'm going to go up in arms. Ilya should not have to fight anybody. Ilya should have to fight nobody else to prove that he can be a lightweight champion. And I get why Islam doesn't want to take this fight. It's a lose-lose fight for him. He can't win. But to be honest, if the UFC forces his hand, I think he'll do it. I think the UFC needs to do that. I don't think Gaethje can become an undisputed lightweight champion. Next question, fact or fake? Rafael Fiziev. I'm going to change this question. We have it in our notes. I'm going to change it. Rafael Fiziev could become an undisputed UFC champion because he's talked about moving down to featherweight now, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, I definitely don't think he could become a lightweight champion, so I'm going to rule that off the book. I think, he's 32, Ilya's only 28, Islam's 33. He would have to make up some crazy time with some impressive wins that probably aren't going to happen in terms of where he's ranked right now. I think he's at number 11 prior to the loss. But at featherweight, it becomes interesting. I think that it's a lot more probable.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think could, yes. I think will likely happen, probably not. I think that there's a lot of bad matchups for Fiziev, both at featherweight and at lightweight right now, to be honest. Fiziev's style is poorly matched. I think if he was bloated and was a big old middleweight or light heavyweight, he could be running stuff. But frankly, that as we've seen with Pereira, that only goes so far. So I think that, truthfully, having a striker that good with so little wrestling ability and so little grappling, it doesn't get you that far. Because you might be able to get past a guy like Justin Gaethje, which he wasn't. But can you get past a guy like Islam Makhachev? Can you get past a guy like Arman Tsarukyan? No, you simply cannot with that style. If you go to featherweight, can you get past an Aljamain Sterling? Can you get past an Alexander Volkanovski, a Diego Lopez, and Movsar Evloev? No, you simply can't. Their grappling is too good. Even though it's not even some of their main strategical ways, it's so good that when you're facing a striker as great as Fiziev, you have to use it. Next, we had an interesting announcement after 313. Jalen Turner retired. Should he have done that after his loss to Ignacio Bahamondes? Fact or fake?
I'm not gonna really lean towards either side because I don't think I have the position to say like whether he should or shouldn't have retired. Based on his post-fight interview, it seems like it's kind of a personal decision to him. I mean, it's clear that his priorities kind of lie in preserving his body and the fact that his kids are getting older and needs to take care of them. But it surprised me. He's only 29. I thought he had a lot more to offer, although I know he's coming off a loss, and losing to Bahamondes did not help.
Yeah, look, I mean, his career is in a rough spot. I mean, he was probably 1 or 2 more losses from getting cut. And honestly, I'd like to see this more often. I mean, he's a very talented fighter. He's very good, but a championship is likely not in the cards for him anytime soon. So quite frankly, it's a thing we need to see more often because you see fighters fight until they're 40 or 50 and they get tons of brain damage and it's kind of continuous decline in skill level. I mean, look at Tony Ferguson, look at Chuck Liddell in their later careers. It's not good. It's not. Look at BJ Penn. It's bad. So for Turner to go out and say, look, I'm still athletically competent, I'm still mentally competent, and I'm retiring now because I've made enough money, I'm comfortable, I want to take care of my kids, is honorable, and I support it. As much as a fan, I'd like to see him put on more great fights, and he put on many great fights. I think that it's honorable, and I support him in his decision. And if he does choose to come back to the UFC, I would love to see it. But frankly, I think that he's making the right decision right now.
Yep.
Next, fact or fake. Mauricio Hufi has the best chance of becoming a champion out of all of the fighting nerds.
Yeah, I was on the fence about this because I think it's either him or Burahalo. KO is he's ranked at much closer to a title shot. But with the status of middleweight, like a lot of these divisions, assuming that Khamzat versus DDP is next, I think his likelihood of becoming champ is way more dependent on if Khamzat wins or loses. I think that DDP is a little bit more of an possible matchup for him to become champion. And if he beats Imavov, maybe for a number one contender, whatever. But Rufi is more likely, I think, just because he's younger and I see him maybe surging while some of these dangerous lightweights that are they're not rising, but have been at the top for a while, start to age out of their division.
Look, I have to disagree here. I think that the most likely fighting to become champion would have to be Bahayo. I mean, he's ranked, I believe, 7th in the world right now at middleweight. He's finished so many fighters, both inside and outside the UFC, in so many different ways. He's the most versatile, in my opinion, because Hoovy is a great striker. I mean, the best striker in the fighting nerd camp, in my opinion, even better than Carlos Prates. However, his wrestling has been a little dodgy at times against the fence, and we've seen some flaws in his game in that regard. Bahayo, we haven't really seen anything too alarming. I mean, he went through a 5-round war with the always durable Jared Cannonier, who just picked up a win against Gregory Rodriguez, and what he did was he went 2-2 into the final rounds and went and clobbered Cannonier in the 5th. I mean, he really BTA'd him, if you know what I'm saying. I don't know if Rufi can do that right now. I think that Bahayo can beat DDP, and this is my take for the episode. I think he can beat Khamzat too, and not only do I think he can beat Khamzat, I think he can finish Khamzat. I think he can submit him. I think Khamzat's jiu-jitsu is good, but not great. And I think that Bahayo is much better jiu-jitsu. I think Khamzat's wrestling is superior, sure, but if you end up in full guard and he throws up a triangle, does Khamzat get out of that? I don't think so. Not against Caio Bahayo. I don't think so. And Caio's striking is much better than Khamzat's at present. So I think that not only does Caio beat him, I think he finishes the entire middleweight division. And I don't see many middleweights that can beat him right now. I really don't. Not in the unranked pool, no prospects, nothing. I don't see many middleweights on planet Earth that beat Caio Bahayo anytime soon. I do see flaws in the games of Mauricio Hoopy. I do see flaws in the game of John Silva. Carlos Prates is an interesting one because we haven't seen him tested as much as those two. But I'm assuming the wrestling will be a little bit weaker than Bahayo, who was a grappling heavy specialist, whereas Prates has used his hands so much. But of those four, I would say Fake, the most likely fighting nerd to become a champion would be Caio Bahayo.
Yeah, well, I'd like to agree with you on most part, except the Hamzat. I mean, it's an interesting take. I know at least one of our mutual friends who might get very, very upset at that take, but it's interesting.
Yeah, shout out to Boss Man, but I don't see eye to eye with him here, man. I don't. Let's talk about our next Factor Fake segment before I get in too much trouble with my good friend. But Joshua Van, is he the best boxer at flyweight? Factor Fake?
I think it's a little too early. I'm gonna lean towards Fake. Not that saying that he's not a great boxer, or that I actually think he's number 2. I think that Brandon Royval is still the best boxer at flyweight.
I'm gonna let that marinate. Hold on, that's marinated. Oh no, you burnt the food. You burnt the food because look, I wouldn't put Brandon Royval in the top 4 boxers at flyweight.
Well, you put Van, who's yet to verse a ranked opponent.
Joshua Van is ranked, and he fought Charles Johnson, who was ranked at the time. He lost to Charles Johnson, yes.
So,
but Brandon Moreno outboxed Royval. Alexander Pantoja outboxed Royval. Manel Kopp would likely outbox Royval. And then if we're talking about Joshua Van, I think he's in that conversation too. Steve Ursay is in that conversation too. I think Kai Kara France is in that conversation too. There's a lot of names I'd throw in there, but I'd say pure boxing, not kickboxing, not Muay Thai, no elbows, no knees, just a boxing match. I'll take Pantoja, I'll take Kopp, and I'll take Van over Brandon Royval. Because here's the thing, you're missing kicks and stuff, then we're talking about Kai Kara France, we're talking about other guys, right? But if we're talking about a pure, who would I want in a ring over anybody at flyweight, Pantoja or Van? That's it. That's the whole list.
Mm.
Okay. Last Factor Fake. This one is about this past Saturday's Fight Night event in the Apex. Roman Dolidze, will he become Georgia's 3rd UFC champion? Luke, Factor Fake.
I'm leaning towards Fake just because he's 36. DDP, Khamzat, Imavov, and Whitaker all exist in that division, and I think those are all 4 losses that would get handed to him.
I completely agree. I think Dolidze is perennially underrated. He's really impressed me. However, I also find there's too many killers at middleweight right now. There's Khamzat, there's DDP, there's whatever's left of Adesanya, whatever's left of Whitaker, whatever's left of Strickland. You have Bahayo right there. You have Hernandez. I mean, you have so many gird guys at middleweight right now. It's kind of becoming a lion's den, which is pretty good because middleweight was in a rough spot for a couple of years. But I don't think Dolidze can get it done against those guys. And like I said about Bahio earlier, I think Bahio is going to dominate the division for a few years. So next up, one of our fan favorite segments, I would say, Ted's Talks, which we've been anxiously missing for the last 2 weeks.
Let's hear it.
Here's his take on how to solve the light heavyweight division. I believe I haven't watched it. I always go in blind, guys, but he may have hinted to me that is what this is. Let's see it.
What's up, guys? We're getting right into it today. Welcome back to Ted's Talks. Welcome back to No Casuals. Saturday was a great time. UFC 313. I personally was not expecting Magomed Ankalev to win, but he did, and we have a new light heavyweight champion. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I think what I think the future of the light heavyweight division is, and for our new champion Ankalev. So at the UFC 313 post-fight press conference, Dana White said that he'll probably be leaning towards an immediate rematch for Pereira and Ankalev. However, for my personal beliefs, I believe that a champion, especially a new champion, should be able to feel out the rest of the division before getting an immediate rematch. In Ankalev's case, I think there are some fun fights that you can make with this. But personally, I want to talk about what I think is next. And for me, that is Carlos Ulberg versus Jan Blachowicz. But I believe Carlos Ulberg will win that fight, and I think he should get the next title shot. He's been on a tear. He's been knocking guys out. He's fast. And I just think this is a fun fight to make, especially because, we've seen our fair share of title shots with champions and low-ranked guys, especially in the past couple of months. But I just think this is a situation where I just don't understand why you wouldn't make that fight, and it would be fun. Ankalev has already fought Pereira before the immediate rematch. Ankalev has already fought Rakic. And Khalil Roundtree and Jamal Hill are already going at it in a few months. So this is the fight to make. I have Carlos Ulberg winning that. I think he should get the title shot, especially because Blachowicz and Ankalev have already fought. So there you have it. That's the future. That's what I think the future of the light heavyweight division will be. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's been great talking to you. As always, I'm Ted. This has been Ted Talks. That's my take. Back to you guys.
I love that wink he's been throwing in there recently. That wink.
Yeah,
If you're watching on Spotify, you're missing the wink, but the wink makes it. He's risen me up, man. That's all I can say. How about this? Before we talk about that take, let's go into my take on what we should do next at light heavyweight, and then Luke can decide which he thinks is the best take on our segment next up. For next up, we of course have my picks for what is next for the division, or for all the fighters actually who have fought in the last 2 weeks. So here is next up. All right. Now on next up, my pick for who should fight Magomed Ankalev next out of the absolute litany of options we have ahead of us. My pick, the winner of Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. Let me explain. Ulberg, if he gets past Blachowicz, will have beaten really one true test in his light heavyweight career. I want to see him fight a guy like Yuri Prochazka if he gets past Blachowicz in a title eliminator. Whereas Hill and Roundtree both have championship level experience against high level opponents, and we know how good they can be. After this absolute cracker of a fight, I would like to see the winner fight Ankalev, as they both are stylistically not the best matchups for Ankalev, and I think if we see improved work from Hill, he can get past Roundtree. I think he can get past Ankalev too. And if Roundtree does what he did against Pereira, I think he could beat Hill and beat Ankalev as well. Luke, do you think there should be a fight between Carlos Ulberg and Magomed Ankalev, permitted Ulberg wins in stunning fashion against Blachowicz, or one of these guys if they get a win? Who do you think is more deserving?
Well, for me, I actually am one of the biggest advocates for an immediate rematch against Pereira for a multitude of reasons. If I were to choose between these two, I'm going with Hill and Roundtree Jr., just because I think that, especially if the UFC wants to test Ankalev, they're going to give him this winner, because I think that Blachowicz, Ted, and Ulberg is young. Ulberg hasn't proved, like, just as you said, and Blachowicz is old. He's like 43, 42 at this point. Already has versed Ankalev, correct? Yeah, he did.
Yeah, they drew. They fought to a draw.
Yeah. So, I personally think that Hill, Roundtree, either one of those guys, I think Roundtree would probably be the bigger test. Is a more likely fight to happen. But let me explain, though, why I think that the immediate rematch is deserved.
Yeah, I want to hear this.
First of all, across the board, the fans and maybe not the judges, but it was still a close fight. I feel like everyone can understand that it wasn't completely one-sided. You had some people saying it was 2-2 going into the fifth, other people saying it was 3-1, which the third round was kind of up in the air. Regardless, especially with Pereira's takedown defense, although defense is not offense, I still think that that was impressive out of him. I think that the UFC deserves to give him an immediate rematch with the amount of fights that he's taken on short notice, with the rising star power that he gave to the sport. If we're talking about who's most deserving here, and who has really like shocked in the past year, the sport and has taken it, I think that Pereira deserves that, and I think that it was close enough to say he deserves an immediate rematch. Also close enough to say, the winner, Hill and Roundtree, are both victims of Pereira. And Blachowicz has already fought Ankalaev. Olberg is a young guy who has only fought, I think, 2 ranked guys. And then Yuri Prohaska is kind of in this like weird spot. I think that it makes most sense for an immediate rematch.
Look, this is where I don't see I'd agree with Luke, because I think that the Pereira Ankalaev fight was pretty clear to me. I think Ankalaev clearly won that fight. It wasn't particularly close. However, the division is in a weird spot. So what I'm doing if I'm the UFC is I'm getting the biggest fight I can for Pereira right now, which is not a rematch against Ankalaev. I'm gonna let the light heavyweight division sort itself out, even though there are a lot of Pereira's quote unquote victims, which is fair. I will let it figure itself out while I move Pereira up to heavyweight to make his heavyweight debut against Alexander Volkov. Now, Volkov let's be real, got robbed against Cyril Gane. So how do we reward him? We reward him with Alex Pereira. This will boost Volkov's stardom if he gets a win here, and he's such a big guy that he actually will have an advantage over Pereira in the range, which Pereira's never really seen in mixed martial arts. And at the same time, you have Pereira who gets to come up and fight another striker who's not going to throw in takedowns very much, and he gets a stylistically advantageous matchup. What do you think about this fight, Luke? Permitted the rematch does not happen.
Permitted the rematch does not happen. This is the exact heavyweight who had won in the verse. I don't think there's anyone else. I don't think. However, if he does get the rematch and wins against that, I think he would just get the immediate winner of Aspinall Jones if that happens. I think he would deserve that.
I think that makes sense too. I mean, to send Pereira up would make sense, but I think there are some real big contenders coming up at the heavyweight division, which we'll talk about in a moment when we get to our heavyweight fight on the UFC London card this Saturday. I think there's some very solid prospects in the top 15 right now. Walter Cortez Acosta comes to mind after he got a big win on Saturday. I digress. Let's continue. Next fight, Justin Gaethje fought Arman Tsarukyan in a number 1 contender bout, following an Ilya Islam fight, or an all of whatever. There's a few fights you can make here, but I want this fight next because I want Gaethje to fight up, and I want Tsarukyan to fight one more time before he gets a title shot again.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly what the UFC should do if they weren't going to give it to Arman right away, permitted that the Ilya fight did not happen. But this is what they should do.
Next fight, Rafa Fiziev, if he stays at lightweight, should fight Ludovic Klein.
I don't have an issue with it.
I mean, Klein is, in my opinion, the second best unranked lightweight in the UFC right now behind Joel Alvarez. So to have him fight up to 11 is a little risky against a guy as good as Fiziev, but I think Klein is ready for the challenge. Ignacio Bahamondes, he should fight Renato Moicano next.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little interesting him going from a championship fight all the way down, although he was fighting up to Bahamondes. I was kind of hoping that Rufi and Bahamondes might be Rufi's first ranked fight. I was looking at that. But this is, I mean, it's not something that I dislike at all. I think stylistically this would be very interesting.
I mean, for me at least, what this does for me is that Moicano's a big mic presence. He's a big fan favorite. And he can find ways to use his jiu-jitsu to get past Bahamondes here, but Bahamondes' striking is so elite that if he can win against Moicano, he's made himself a superstar, not only here in the United States, but in his home country of Chile. Let's move on. Amanda Lemos should fight the loser of Viana Yaniropa versus Yan Xiaonan.
For sure, yeah.
Right, that one's easy. Not super excited. Not too much to talk about, but I wanted to make sure because Lemos had a very good performance against Ismael Lucindo. Lucindo, I want to give her Tisha Pennington, who's coming off a win over Carla Esparza.
Fair,
right? Keep that one quick. Risa Hoofi should jump the line a little bit. Yeah. I want to fight Mateus Gamrot.
Yeah, I was thinking that this would probably be the second most likely behind Bahamondes. I think that this is probably, if they wanted to really push him up, it's the one to do it if they want to jumpstart him.
And Gamrot's a very good test. I mean, Gamrot is legitimate. You can make that a pay-per-view featured bout. You can make that a fight night main event in Brazil or in the United States. I think it's a banger fight. It'll be super fun to watch. I can't wait for when this fight hopefully inevitably happens, whether or not it's a fight the UFC makes next. King Green should fight this Saturday's Vucinic Duncan winner. We'll talk about that fight later, so don't talk too much about it, Luke. Hold your tongue. What do you think about this matchmaking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I don't even know what to do with Green at this point. Speaking of fighters who kind of stuck in the division and kind of never retire, like we were talking about Jalen
Yeah.
Turner.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh Van should fight
Yeah.
Asu Amabayev.
Yep, no doubt about it. This is the one to make.
And this is the fight we were talking about on the bus ride, on the car ride to the airport. This is the first fight that came to mind, and it gets me so excited. I love this fight. It's a great fight.
Yes.
Bruno Ferreira should fight Chris Curtis.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I mean, think about it. Ferreira needs to use his judo skills. He's got all that power, but against a boxer as good as Curtis, I think it's a stylistically interesting matchup, and
It
it'll be
is.
a litmus test for Ferreira. And Carlos Leal should fight the winner of Randy Brown versus Nicholas Dalby.
Oh, I would love Leal versus Brown too. That's
That'd be great. That's such a
Yeah.
good fight.
Yeah.
Finally, this Saturday, Roman Dolidze should fight Israel Adesanya.
I have yet to disagree with you, maybe except for the first one. I think that this is a great one. I think, especially for Adesanya, where you kind of don't know what to do with him, Dolidze is a good bet.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, we're gonna pivot to this Saturday's incredible card from London. It's such a great card. If you are not watching it, it is at 4 p.m. Eastern. The main card starts. Get yourself a little lunch, maybe some Dave Stott chicken. Enjoy, watch some fights. Just saying, that'd be a great time. First and foremost, before we get into the big fights, your prospect of the night, Luke. Who is your prospect of the night this Saturday?
All right, I'm gonna go with Loner
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh. Loner
No,
Kavanaugh.
no off. It's
Um,
just Kavanaugh. It's a
Kavanaugh.
silent.
Kavanaugh. We last saw him. I think he was. I forget what card it was. Oh, it was the Figueiredo versus Jan card. But
Yeah.
he's going up against another flyweight prospect, Felipe Dos Santos. He's definitely going to be I think he's definitely going to be a ranked flyweight in the future. And he's one of these progressive fighters who really gets better in each bout. He's 8-0 professionally. He is one of the fastest paces that we've seen in a while at flyweight. I feel like even for flyweights, he makes it look like they're moving in slow motion. He has knockout ability, and I think that he has something special that's going to happen on Saturday night where he might really look like a standout prospect after tonight. And I know that people are talking about him, but I think more people are going to talk about him soon, especially against Felipe Dos Santos, who I think is coming off a loss, although he is also a prospect. So this is a battle of the prospects.
Look, I completely agree with you. I'm really hot on Kavanaugh too, but however, my pick for prospect of the night, Mick Parkin. Now he's ranked, so it technically doesn't count, but I wanted to count him because he's not on a lot of people's radars. But he's got a really quick knockout over Lucas Brzezicki, which is, look, not the highest quality of opponent, but a very beautiful performance, very quick knockout. Do yourself a favor and watch. Additionally, you have the likes of, the heavyweight division's weak right now. It's not a good division. And if you can get past Marcin Tibur, he's going to be ranked in the top 7 of the division. Then we got to start talking about title shots for this guy. And nobody's talking about him right now. And he could be the threat to Tom Aspinall. He fights so similarly to Tom Aspinall. It's not even funny. That's my pick for prospect of the night. However, I don't mind your pick at all. Let's talk about these fights real quick. We're already at 30 minutes. We're running out of time. But we got to talk about these London fights because they're just too good to miss.
Yeah.
First up,
go through 'em.
we've talked about this behind the scenes, Luke. We don't agree on this fight. Leonard's fighting Sean Brady, and Leonard is the underdog on Saturday
Yeah.
against a guy who has a TKO loss to Bilal Muhammad. What do you think about that? It raises red flags to me, but I'll let you go ahead. He's your hometown hero.
Well, to give you credit, and there is in no way, like, this is one of the closest fights, I think, at welterweight. Like, this is the classic, I wouldn't even call Brady a strong grappler. He's a little bit of everything. But Edwards and him, it's going to be a very interesting stylistic matchup. I believe that Brady is going to have what it takes to get it done. My mic just fell on me. And I just think he's going to overwhelm Leon. I think that Leon is on the down, and I know that you're kind of bullish on him, especially in this fight, thinking he might maybe get a quick knockout, showcase some of the striking that he hasn't recently, especially against previous opponent Bilal. But I think, Brady's one loss, it's to Bilal, isn't it?
It is the TKO first round knockout.
Yeah. Yeah, so this guy, we've seen what he's done. His last fight too, absolute dominating at the Apex, 5 rounds. Um, it's gonna be interesting to see. Of course, I'm gonna back him because he's from Philadelphia. Um, but yeah, it's this is an exciting one. Really has big implications too for welterweight.
And look, this is a heart over head pick. I mean, our head over heart pick because I want Brady to win too. I love Brady's story. He's inspirational. He's a really great fighter, and he's young. I mean, 32 is young for welterweight. And while Rocky's better, and he's not long in his career. He hasn't fought that much. He hasn't had that many miles on his car, if you will. Edwards has been fighting forever in the UFC. I mean, he's been in the UFC since what 2013,
Mhm.
and he's a former champion, future Hall of Famer, like absolute legend. But the wrestling has always been a problem for him. I mean, look at what Usman did in the first fight. Look what Usman did in the third fight, or the second. Sorry, the first fight and the second fight. I apologize.
Yeah, yeah,
In
no,
both
you're
of them,
fine.
he dominated in the wrestling. But Edwards' striking has come a long way. His takedown defense is pretty solid. I think Brady can control him for a round or two, but Edwards is going to slowly pick him apart on the feet and find the shot to put him in a compromised position and potentially finish with ground and pound or submission. I think I got Edwards here, and I think I got him by submission. However, you're right. This is a very close fight where the finest of margins are going to determine the winner. So I'm really excited to see who gets it done here.
Yeah, for sure.
Our next fight, our co-main event, Jan Blachowicz is fighting Carlos Over. We've talked about this fight a little bit. Let's just go over it super quickly. Who do you have in this one? Why do you have him? Let's just run through this fight because I feel like we're feeding a fed horse at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Olberg is the favorite. He's minus 225, which is very interesting, especially because Blachowicz is one of these guys who tests upcoming prospects. I'm going with Olberg. I think that he's the type of guy that we've seen what he's done recently as an up and coming light heavyweight. Blachowicz is 42. I mean, he's a veteran. Um, the more I talk about it, I feel like it's a little bit risky, these odds. I feel like it's more close than people are saying, you know what I mean? And it's a guaranteed knockout, in my opinion. I don't think this is going to go to distance.
Look, my take, man. I know I love underdogs, but I really love this underdog. I mean, Jan Blachowicz is a former champion. He's got the heart of a champion. He fights like a champion. Over has never been tested, like never been tested at an elite level because light heavyweight is so shallow right now at the bottom end of it. So we're looking at a light heavyweight that has never been tested. He's only lost Kennedy Nzechukwu, who's not even in the division anymore. Against the guy who's a former champion who's fought and beaten guys like Adesanya. He's drawn with Ankalev. He's beaten, I mean, almost went to a draw with Pereira. I've got Blachowicz in this one. I think he's still got it.
Yeah.
Even with a long layoff, I think he's still got it. I'm excited to see what he does.
And I'm gonna watch for Blachowicz to really pick him apart on the feet, like those leg kicks. I think
Yep.
that's probably what's gonna get
Body
him.
work, too. I don't
Yeah.
think he'll go to the head very much. I think he'll use the
No,
body
yeah.
and the legs.
Yep.
Next up, Gunnar Nelson is fighting Kevin Holland in the featured bout. Now, I would usually put this under the radar, but with Kevin Holland being on the billing, what do you think about this?
I mean, didn't see it coming. I'm gonna go with Gunnar Nelson just as my gut. But I mean, I don't know.
I mean, we're looking at two guys that are so one-dimensional, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
I mean, Gunnar Nelson has been knocked out by guys like Santiago Ponzinibbio in under 3 minutes. Kevin Holland has been submitted by guys like Craner de Ritter in under 3 minutes. So we're looking at two guys that are completely unilateral as fighters. Two guys who are very talented, but have never been able to put it all together. Two guys that are coming to the end of their careers. Look, I want Kevin Holland to win. I don't think he's going to. But I'll be rooting for him very hard because he's one of my favorite fighters. He's a great guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him. He's really wonderful. But for now, I don't think that this is his time anymore. I think the division has moved past him, to be quite honest. Both the 170-pound division and the 185-pound division. Next, under the radar, our last segment of the day. We talk about a couple fights you might not know about, and a couple fights that you might know about, but hopefully you don't because we're going to educate you. First up, Jordan Vucinic is fighting Chris Duncan.
Yeah. Also a really good fight. Jordan Vucinic is one of those prospects at is it lightweight? Yeah.
Yeah, lightweight.
And we were talking about him as the next opponent for who
He was supposed to fight Guram Kudus. He fought Guram Kudus and fought a very close fight, but lost a decision.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm siding with him. I want to hear you though. I want you to educate me a little bit about this, honestly.
I'm a big fan of Duncan. I'm really hot on him. I think he's a great prospect. However, I think Vucinic is just too tested. He's got too much experience. He's fought the best guys in the world, and Cage Warriors, and now in the UFC. Chris Duncan has fought good guys. I'd like to see him fight a striker next. Vucinic is obviously a very well-rounded mixed martial artist. I've got Vucinic here too, but I think this will be a closer fight than the odds might suggest. I think this fight should be maybe plus minus 150, 160, not 275, which is crazy. But I think that Duncan has a lot of upset potential here, but I do have Vucinic in here if it was even money. Next up, Nathaniel Wood is fighting Morgan Charrier. This is a fight that a lot of the hardcores are really talking about as fight of the night potential. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, this is another one of those. There's a lot of close fights on this card. Damn, this is one of those that's also very, very close in my opinion. Kind of have similar styles. I think that Charrier is probably going to. I'm going to side with him even as the favorite. Yeah.
Look, I agree. I think Charrier, he's faster. He might be stronger as well. Wood is obviously very technical and very tested. He's a really, really good. Even though his nickname is a prospect, he's a very good veteran. But Charrier, despite his record, is much better than the eye can see. I mean, if you watch his fights in the UFC, he's so talented. He's so good. I've got Charrier here. I have him doing a show-out performance. I think he should be minus 270 or something like that. As good as Wood is, I think Charrier is going to style on him a little bit, if you will.
Okay.
We've talked about this fight a little bit. Lona Kavanaugh, Felipe dos Santos. I know your pick. I'm in alignment with you, actually. I think Kavanaugh does it here, and he does it pretty well. Dos Santos has struggled against high-level opponents, and Kavanaugh is certainly ready. And then finally, McParkin, Marcin Tybura. I talked about this. What do you think about this fight? Do you have Parkin pulling an upset here? Or do you think Tybura holds on to the break?
Absolutely have McParkin. I also think that Tybura's last win, in my opinion, was a little bit controversial with the elbows. I think that if it went longer, he probably would have lost to Renato Diniz. And he's 39. He's on the back end of his career. I think that McParkin is going to put on a show as a prospect, and really become one of these heavyweights. That's maybe, I don't know if a lot of people have heard of him, but soon they will.
Look, I completely agree. Preaching to the choir, I'm very hot on McParkin. But Tybura is always testy. He's always good. I mean, what he did to Diniz was domination. I disagree with you there. I think Diniz would have certainly lost that fight. He was completely demoralized. However, Parkin is not Diniz. Parkin is better everywhere than Diniz. Maybe worse at kickboxing, but better at Muay Thai, better wrestling, better jiu-jitsu. That's all I have to say about that. Finally, our curtain jerker, Roman Dolidze, who just beat Vucinic, who we just talked about, is fighting Kai Fernandez.
Yeah, I think the odds on this make sense too. As a heavy favorite, I think he's probably the Georgian Viking is going to get it done.
It's a sick
Big
nickname.
favorite.
It's a great nickname.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and I think he should be. I mean, he's one of the best unranked guys in the UFC in any weight class. And he struggled against really high-level opponents, but he fought guys like Demiris Magulov. He's fought in guys like Mateusz Gamrot. He's fought really, really high-level opponents and gone really well against them. I don't think Fernandez is quite at that level. Now with that, we're going to close our show, which has been super fast-paced, but that's good. It means there's a lot to talk about. Luke is getting surgery, so we wish him well. We might take a little break because of that. Whenever he's ready, we'll be right back on air. As you know, we are always bringing the heat on No Casuals. Do you have any last words, Luke?
So excited. Everyone tune in. London. So make sure you got the times right because I think it's weird times or not weird time. London times.
4 p.m. Eastern main card, 1 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, there you go.
I've got it memorized, dude. I'm ready. I'm ordering Dave's and I'm having a party in
What a night.
Syracuse, New York. You're going to Banya,
What a
Lucky.
night. Banya and Dave's. We're gonna hit Dave's, of course, for the fights.
We're all hitting Dave's. We're hitting remote
Yeah.
Dave's.
Yeah.
All right. This has been No Casuals. Thank you as always, Luke. We look forward to seeing you next week. We're out.
We're out.